Good morning, my brothers and sisters. Today, we're going to learn about the women at the cross. We're going to start in John chapter 19, verse 25. So what we've been doing here during this pre-Easter season is we've been placing ourselves as witnesses to the passion of Christ. That means his final teachings, his arrest, his mockings, his beatings, the scourging, the trials, the crucifixion, and death. And what we're doing by doing that is we're affording ourselves the opportunity, the agency, to respond correctly and devotionally and decisively to the Lord. So we're placing ourselves at the foot of the cross, walking nearby, bearing witness, and considering the implications for ourselves. So yesterday we talked about the centurion who was man enough to change his mind, the hardest thing in the world as he stands before Jesus. And a couple of days ago, we similarly saw the saving faith from the thief on the cross, and we heard the revolutionary and theologically complete treatise on heaven. Today, you will be with me in paradise. So what we're trying to do is we're striving to let us not let this crucifixion go unnoticed, and to not let ourselves go undecided or unmoved or unchanged by it. So let's start with the bad news. Let's talk about the men at the cross. Well, there are not a whole lot of them. What happens to the men? So at the arrest, after Peter cuts off the ear of Malchus, in Mark 14:50 it says, "And they all left him and fled." Jesus was left alone in the garden, and they all fled. So you say what a bunch of weenies. But no, they were in a seizing mood. They were and eventually, as far as Jesus, they were in a killing mood. In a sense, they did the right thing, because then in verse 51 says, "And a young man," this is in Mark, and it's Mark describing himself, "and a young man followed him, and with nothing on but a linen cloth about his body. And they seized him." So now they're seizing the followers of Jesus, but he left the linen cloth and he runs away naked. So all the remaining disciples, the 11 plus Judas equals 12, they all flee from him. One follows at a distance, ends up running away naked. But later, John comes back to the foot of the cross. So let me read in Mark chapter 15 about the good guys at the cross. Mark chapter 15, verse 40. "There were also women looking on from a distance, among whom were Mary Magdalene, Mary the mother of James the younger, and of Joseph, and Salome." So three women. "When he was in Galilee," so now 80 miles away previously, "they followed him and ministered to him. And there were also many other women who came up with him to Jerusalem." So the women at the cross, many women came from Galilee all the way to Jerusalem, an 80-mile journey or so. They made the trek all the way with him. They were in his caravan, his posse, so to speak. So what were the women doing before? Well, it tells us there they followed him. That is, they listened with their ears, followed him with their feet, but then they ministered to him. That's the coolest thing. They used their hands to help, to attend. They weren't just, attenders. They started there, but then they took care of his needs. They were at service for him. They waited upon and did basically whatever was necessary. They were of practical help. In Luke chapter 8, it says, verse 1, "Soon afterward he went on through the cities and villages, proclaiming and bringing the good news of the kingdom of God. And the 12 were with him, and also some of the women who had been healed of evil spirits and infirmities. Mary, called Magdalene, from whom 7 demons had gone out, and Jn19, the wife of Chuza, Herod's household manager, and Susanna, and many others who provided for them out of their means." All right, so the disciples were there, but also women, and women who had been healed of evil spirits and infirmities, most notably Mary Magdalene. And we find Mary Magdalene, as our story begins, at the cross. John 19:25, "But standing by the cross of Jesus were his mother and his mother's sister, Mary the wife of Clopas, and Mary Magdalene, from whom 7 demons had gone out." So I wonder, if you had 7 demons go out of you, how appreciative you would have been. So Jesus healed people, but not everybody who he healed returned to him. So we find that Mary returns, and then she provides and she follows. How far did she follow? All the way to the end. How far? All the way to Jerusalem, 80 miles away. How long did she do it? Well, she was found with him at his end. Colossians 3:9 is one of my favorite verses. I think it's going to be on my tombstone. To be found in him. Our job is to be found in him at our end. And Mary Magdalene was found with him at his end. And not only that, she was with him before the end, during the end, and after the end. Now, I know we're not supposed to read ahead, and I'm going to give you a little spoiler alert here, but Jesus is going to be resurrected on the third day. In Mark 16, verse 9, it says, now when he rose early on the first day of the week, that's Easter Sunday, Jesus, he appeared first to Mary Magdalene. So why to Mary Magdalene? Well, she was there. She showed up. She was ministering. She was faithful. She was generous. She was thankful, and she was frequently found with him. So let me just draw a couple of conclusions for this. The foot of the cross is a great place to be, both for women and for men. Everybody should spend a few minutes there. And the authors of the Gospels go to great lengths to tell us of the women. They're there. They're a named element. They're faithful during hard times. So like the women at the cross, let's show up there during our consideration of the passion. Let's show up also at other times. Let's be found in him and found with him. So follow him practically, daily, listen spiritually, support him, worship with him, and support his work. Let's all be one of the women at the cross. Let's be like Mary Magdalene, faithful, generous, thankful, found with him. Could your activity at your church be described as attending, taking care of, being at service, waiting upon, doing whatever is necessary at the practical? So let's be like Mary Magdalene. Why? Well, to such come the resurrection in a special way. Thanks for listening.